A high-risk military operation became one of the most tense events of this war. Already in the early hours of this Monday, April 6, 2026, Washington was celebrating the rescue of the second crew member of the F-15E fighter jet. Shot down over Iran, described by Donald Trump as a colonel, he was brought out alive from a mountainous area after almost 2 days hiding behind enemy lines. The episode highlights exactly what weighs most in this conflict. What happened was direct and serious. On Friday, April 3rd, the F-15E was shot down over Isfahan province and the 2 crew members ejected at different locations. One of them was rescued in the first search effort, while the other was left isolated in enemy territory, injured, as Iranian forces and local networks began searching for him. The importance of this is enormous. If these servicemen were captured, Tehran would gain a political and military trophy in the middle of a war that is already putting pressure on the White House's image. That's why the rescue became the top priority for Donald Trump, for the Pentagon, and for the United States Special Forces. At the center of this crisis was an officer trained to survive, evade, and resist. According to Reuters, he suffered an ankle injury, hid in a crevice in the mountains, and managed to establish contact with the soldiers. He established contact from a crevice in the mountains. A operação entrou em outro. According to Reuters, he suffered an ankle injury, hid in the mountains, and managed to establish contact with the soldiers. According to Reuters, he suffered an ankle injury, hid in a crevice in the mountains, and managed to establish contact with special forces. Why? Because every minute increased the risk of capture, death, and strategic humiliation. The rescue itself was described as one of the boldest actions of the war. Under the cover of night, about 100 special operators went deep into Iranian territory, reached the wounded soldier, and began the withdrawal. But the mission almost collapsed at a most critical moment. 2 MC aircraft suffered mechanical failure and couldn't take off, leaving elite troops at real risk of being trapped inside Iran. The solution was brutal and swift. New, smaller aircraft were sent to extract the men in waves, and the damaged aircraft were destroyed on the ground to prevent sensitive technology from falling into Iranian hands. This is where the case gains historical significance. It wasn't a simple evacuation, it was an extraction, at the risk of operational disaster. The operation also reveals another uncomfortable truth for Washington. Even with all of America's superiority, Iran still manages to wound, delay, and complicate the offensive. Reuters itself reported that in the initial search effort, 2 Black Hawk helicopters were hit by Iranian fire, although they managed to get out of enemy airspace. At another point in the crisis, an A-10 was also hit over Kuwait, causing the pilot to eject. The United States managed to rescue the servicemen, but the strategic cost remains high. So far, the conflict has left 13 American servicemen dead and more than 300 wounded, in addition to keeping Iran's ability to retaliate alive. Where does this lead us? To an even more dangerous scenario. The rescue of the crew member does not end the crisis. It happens amid the pressure on the Strait of Hormuz, the rise in oil prices, and Donald Trump's open threat to escalate attacks if Iran does not give in. In the end, what this episode makes clear is that the United States still has a brutal military capability to locate, enter, operate under fire, rescue its men, and leave hostile territory. Even under the most extreme conditions. More than just a rescue, this action showed strength, reach, organization, and military power. A response that few nations in the world could execute, reinforcing the image that Washington still has a war machine ready to act with precision, speed, and enormous impact.